As of writing and uploading this video, there are 10 mainline Yakuza games. That's 0 through 6, Yakuza Like a Dragon, Kiryu Gaiden, and Infinite Wealth, which means I can finally make a top 10 Yakuza games video. This video is in no way supposed to be an objective ranking of the games, it's just my personal opinions and what I like from Yakuza games. If you want, why not put your rankings in the comments? It's always fun seeing other people's lists. Anyway, without further ado, let's get to the rankings. Number 10. The Man Who Erased His Name. Let me get this out of the way first. I love all of these games. This one just happens to be a bit lower down than the rest. I gotta say, the combat in this game is really satisfying. There's not much variety. The best option is just spamming the wire and agent style, and extreme heat mode in Yakuza style. The story is pretty good. Highlights include the beginning bit, all the long battles, and the entire final chapter. But damn is there a lot of filler. Half of it consists of getting the tigers at the Colosseum and acquiring gadgets. Speaking of the Colosseum though, I think this game probably has the best one. With the amount of characters you can play as, and that cool final boss rush gauntlet, it's definitely up there as the best. They also brought back Pocket Circuit, which was cool, but there was a severe lack of new tracks. Number 9. Kiami 2. What can I say about this game that hasn't already been said, honestly? I think many people can agree that this game is a very mixed bag. This is one of the earlier Dragon Engine games, and it shows. While the combat is definitely improved over Yakuza 6 for the most part, it also makes it worse, with getting rid of that really fun running heavy attack and charged finishes. The story in this game is also really good, up until the final chapter where it kinda just falls apart. The best part about this game is probably the Cabaret Club management game. It's such a good money earner, and I love the way it continues from Yakuza Zero's Cabaret Club story. I also really like just how many upgrades there are. It might be the most upgrades for a single character in all of Yakuza. The game also has some really memorable boss fights, highlights being Majima, Shindo, and Ryuji, despite that finale being a bit lackluster. Overall, this game's pretty good, but it could be way better. Number 8. Yakuza 4. Yeah, that's right, Yakuza 4 at number 8. But like I said with Gaiden, I love all these games. It just so happens I love this one 7 positions down from my favourite. I think the best thing this game did was introduce new protagonists. Without Yakuza 4, we might still be stuck with Kiryu as a protagonist. I mean, entirely for all 10 games at least. The callbacks to Yakuza 1 with Akiyama being present for the 10 billion yen reign, and Jingu's money going to Okinawa Penitentiary number 2 are pretty cool. I think it might be one of those few times the Yakuza series directly mentions events of previous games in the main story. But when you realise that Yakuza 4 came out 5 years after Yakuza 1, meaning it was a 5th anniversary game, yeah, that makes sense. I think this is the only game other than Yakuza 1 that only has Kamurocho as a playable district. Except in this, they add underground areas and rooftop, which is really cool. Fun fact, in Kiami you can actually see the entrances to the parking areas underground, you just can't use them. I think all of the new protagonists are great. Akiyama has one of the most fun fighting styles, Saejima is a really great addition to Majima, and the backstory they made for them in this game elevated Majima to be a really interesting character that sets the groundwork for Yakuza 0. And Tanimura is just a really cool dude. Still hoping it comes back someday. Number 7. Yakuza 5. Yakuza 5 is basically just a bigger Yakuza 4, except this game's side content is so much more fun. Kiryu's taxi driving, Saejima's hunting, Haruka's idol performances, and Shinada's baseball are all really fun and satisfying bits of side content, with really interesting stories tied to them. I think the only thing bringing this game down to a 7 is its story, just so long and convoluted. Like, why is this game 21 chapters long? That's an absurd amount of chapters. It's so long that by the time you get to the finale part, you've forgotten most of the stuff in Kiryu's part. You see him walk into Kamurocho and think, oh yeah, he's in this game. Though I've got to admit, that final boss might be one of the best in the entire series. And I will not hear otherwise. I actually made a whole video about Shinada and why I think he's underrated, so if you want to check it out, that's linked in the description. Number 6. Yakuza 6. Okay, now we get to the point where I can say I really love these games. Yakuza 6 is so close to being a masterpiece. This was the first game on Dragon Engine, and you can feel it. In good ways and not so good ways. You can tell RGG were being very ambitious with this one. Going from Yakuza 5 or Yakuza 0, depending on your order, to this, it's such a drastic jump. Kamurocho is so fun to explore, with all the little alleys and rooftops you can squeeze through, as well as Kamuro Theatre and Little Asia. Yakuza 6's Kamurocho might be one of my favourites because of this. Then there's Onomichi, which is such a beautiful little town. I think this is the closest we'll ever get to a truly rural Yakuza area. But unfortunately, the combat is a bit lacking. The fact there are no weapons is such a disappointment. There's also not a lot of upgrades. In fact, Kiryu's missing a lot of his iconic moves, which is a shame. The story, on the other hand, is amazing. It's such a good look at Kiryu as a person. Also, after coming off of 5, it's such a breath of fresh air to get a digestible solo protagonist game, where the story is pretty easy to follow. I think one of the biggest things dragging this game down is hindsight. This game's ending was one of the saddest endings in the entire series when I first played it. But now we have 3 more games where Kiryu appears, 2 of them being as playable characters. 6 was supposed to be the end of Kiryu, but now it just feels like another chapter in his life. Number 5. Yakuza 3. I honestly think this is the perfect spot for this game. Like, it really is just middle of the road. Yakuza 3 does so much right, but also so much wrong, a lot of which can be blamed on the 8-month development cycle. Everyone talks about Yakuza 3, and while I do think the enemies block a bit too much, there are plenty of abilities to get around it. The story is great, but it really feels rushed in some aspects. I mean, it literally has a chapter called The Plot, where half the story is just told to you. It's like chapter 12 of Yakuza 1 on steroids. But you know what? Despite all that, there's something about this game I love. From the really fun long battles, to the sunny and colourful views of Okinawa, as well as bringing a whole new layer of depth to Kiryu as a character with the orphanage. We see his highs and his lows, and a side to Kiryu that we've never seen prior, his humanity. I genuinely believe that the orphanage is the best thing that ever happened to Kiryu as a character. So much that it's the entire crux of his storyline, even until Gaiden. Also, there's the final boss. Yeah, that's cool. Number 4. Yakuza Kiami. This one may be a little biased. Yakuza Kiami was my first Yakuza game. I never got into it from the memes or seeing how cool Yakuza Zero was. I got into it because a friend told me about it, and I thought, well, I'll pick up the remake of the first game then. Keep in mind, I literally had never seen anything about Yakuza prior, and this was the first thing I saw. I was hooked immediately. Though it took me a while to get through the story, I got so attached to these characters. Kiryu, Haruka and Date became a permanent spot in my brain of cool video game trios, right next to Link, Zelda and Ganondorf. That's how iconic they became to me. But apart from my love for this series starting with this game, it's just a whole lot of fun. Going through Majima Everywhere was really fun. Thankfully, by the time I did go through it, I had already played Yakuza Zero, so I understood all the little references. I know there are definitely people that will get what I mean by this, but the grind of Kiami is one of my favourites. By that I mean Majima Everywhere, Komaki Training, and the Colosseum all coming together to get you to the point of having all your abilities. It feels so rewarding in the end when you can just annihilate with Dragon style. Number 3. Infinite Wealth. It seems like recently the cool thing to do is say that Infinite Wealth is bad, and while I do think the narrative lacked some things that I wanted to see from Kiryu's final game, and the story kinda falls off near the end, this is still a damn good game. The improvements made in the combat made this hard to put down, honestly. I think I clocked about 60 hours in this game within the first week. I was addicted. I think Hawaii is one of the best looking locations they've ever done in the series. It's such a beautiful place to just wander around and look at the sights. I'm super excited to revisit it in Pirate Yakuza. But honestly, the sheer amount of content in this game is crazy. There's Dondoko Island, drink links, life links, Kiryu's memories, weapon upgrades, dungeons, sub-stories, and so many other minigames. It's crazy how much was packed into this game. There's also the fact that it just looks amazing. While I don't think it has that charm of something like Yakuza III's Okinawa, the sheer graphical fidelity in this game is so impressive, and I'm really glad RGG is sticking with the Dragon engine. Number 2. Yakuza Zero. I love this game. Take everything I said about Kiami and times it by 10. Weirdly, Yakuza Zero was my second Yakuza game after Kiami. When I played them, it was back on my old Xbox One, in a time where the Yakuza series wasn't entirely released yet on other consoles. So I had a choice. Do I move on to Kiami 2 without being able to play 3, 4 and 5, or just go on to Zero and wait for the rest? I decided on the latter. But man, what a phenomenal game. I remember with this game's story, for the first 4 chapters, I wasn't entirely hooked. But then as soon as chapter 6 rolled around, I was instantly obsessed and completed it in a couple days. I think considering I'd just finished Kiami as well, that scene with Nishiki was really good. I knew where he was going to end up and how this one selfish act kinda set the stepping stones of Nishiki's downfall. It made me realise that those aspects of him were there all along, whether Kiryu nor Nishiki knew it. Anyway, I think what really got me obsessed with this game was the setting. Kamurocho in the 80s feels so lively. Also, the side content for Kiryu and Majima were genuinely some of the most fun I've had with the game ever. Unlocking Dragon Style and Mad Dog Style had me so insanely hyped. I think one of the best parts about this game is that since it's a prequel to the entire series, they could kinda just do whatever they wanted without being held back to a certain degree. I mean, they still needed Kiryu to rejoin the Dojima family because of him being in it at the start of 1, but in terms of Majima's story and the stuff with Tachibana and Makoto, it's just absolutely amazing. Tachibana's death is one of the most heartbreaking moments in the entire series, and it's amplified by Makoto's reaction. Number 1. Yakuza Like a Dragon. If I had to describe this game in one word, I think I'd go with magical. After playing 7 games and finishing the Kiryu saga, I wasn't sure if Ichiban would interest me as much as Kiryu did, but within the first chapter, this game proved me wrong. The gameplay, while very simple compared to Infinite Wealth, is incredible, and the ways they managed to so effortlessly transfer so many elements from the previous games into turn-based combat was so fun to see. There's also the new district of Ijincho in Yokohama. While now I kind of roll my eyes at Ijincho with how much it's been featured in other games, with it being very surface level and limiting, in this game it feels really alive. Compared to Lost Judgment, the Kaito Files, Gaiden, and Infinite Wealth, this version of Ijincho feels like a real lived-in city that has so many small details. I can still remember the moment where I realised this was my favourite Yakuza game, and it's a bit of an odd one. It was this fight right here. For some reason this fight made this entire game click for me, probably because it was the first major fight with 3 party members. And then there's the story. I don't think there's a single game that tops this story for me. The way it builds upon what you know, while also breaking it down, the absolute emotion in some scenes and sheer hype in others. Yakuza Like a Dragon is a masterpiece. I fully believe that. RGG took everything they learned from the Kiryu saga and were given a blank slate in which they were able to put together my personal favourite game in the entire series. There's a certain level of just pure distilled positivity that comes from this game's story. The whole message of being able to rise up from rock bottom and find meaning in unexpected places is so potent. None of these characters really wanted to be here in these situations, but they overcome and thrive together because of it. Ichiban is so full of charisma that he manages to convince pretty much all of his oppositions. Like, he gets the entire Ijin 3 on his side just by being nice to them, which is crazy. Then there's that last scene with Masato Arakawa, which I still think is one of the most realistic scenes in this franchise. Seeing Ichiban beg for the life of someone he views as a brother, despite all the atrocities he's committed, just, man. And that's it, that's my personal top 10 Yakuza games. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, why not give this video a like, and comment what your top 10 is. And with that, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.